Yeah, it was lovely. Went to Nice and went to Cannes. That's it. They held the music festival and that as well. So it was good. So a photo of Nice. It was just, so this is Nice. Pretty much the apartment that I was staying in is pretty much right underneath where I was standing as well. And my friends got sick of me saying that Nice was nice. But yes, I'm still going to take every chance I can to say it.
I'm curious.
Swimming around.
A lot of the photos are of you. So, did you have a drone following you around, or a robot, or what?
No. Sometimes I just got people that were standing there going, "Hey, can you take a photo of me?" But I was also traveling with an ex-partner as well, so she took a few photos as well.
Okay, and no one stole your camera?
Nope. No. I mean, it's all tourists, and then there's some locals, and the locals have been really friendly everywhere as well. Like everywhere, I'm not great with languages, but I figure by the time you can say hello, thank you, bathroom and beer, the rest you can kind of work out. So
I think beer is a universal word, eh?
Yeah, pretty much. Just like, sign language works if you can't figure out the words for it. But yeah, it's interesting here in Bulgaria because they kind of speak Bulgarian, but also here in Bansko they have their own sort of sub language as well. But then some of them speak Russian, and some of them speak Turkish, and some of them speak Greek, and because it's not that far from the Greek border. And yeah, so the language has been interesting. Also, we spent a weekend at a chateau in France, which has its own vineyard. It was probably the most luxurious of the time. Everywhere else that I went, we were looking, basically the priority was, does it have decent Wi-Fi so that I could continue doing business and continue doing the work that I need to do, and continue doing the strategy stuff and the reports that I needed to do and all that general stuff, and fitting the amazing adventures around doing that. But this was definitely a weekend off. There was no work being done by the pool, with quite a number of bottles.
I also see two glasses. I also see two glasses, but I won't go. Well, you can allude to that if you want to, but I'll also suggest to everybody that is online, if you've got a pressing question when you do see one of these slides come up and you need to know something like how come there's two glasses on that table or something like that, then yeah, feel free to drop it in the chat there, and we'll bring it up.
So I did have a traveling companion for some of the trip as well. So which made it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more challenging. And like I said, I did have a traveling companion, so you can tell how that ended up. So this is Barcelona. This is the big church they've been building for the last 300 years or whatever it is, and it's still got a fair way to go yet. You sort of think, when you hear about it, how could they possibly be making the one building for the last 300 years? Surely the unions have got control over the project for that to happen. But no, when you're up close to it, it's you can definitely see why it takes up an entire city block in Barcelona, and there's so many spires and so much detail in all of the spires, and so much detail internally as well. It's just one of the most phenomenal buildings that I've ever seen. Really, it's very, very overwhelming when you really get up close to it, and it's just an amazing project. Like I said, I'm an old movie tragic, so anybody else who might be an old movie tragic, especially musicals, will potentially remember this garden, and especially that pose. It's the very, very, the last scene in Joe Rennie and Sound of Music. So went to Salzburg, actually stayed in the actual Von Trapp family home, not the ones they used in the movie, but the actual Von Trapp family home, in the bedroom of the eldest daughter. And during the war, after the Von Trapps left and went to I can't remember what they went to, but it wasn't Switzerland because it's a long, long walk from Salzburg to Switzerland. Yeah, the Nazis actually took over, and their house was actually Himmler's base when Hitler was at Eagle's Nest. So when they say that the Nazis took over the house in the movie, they certainly did. It was an amazing experience, and also where Mozart was born. So had lunch in the actual house where Mozart was born, as well as staying in the actual house that the Von Trapps lived in. So Salzburg is pretty amazing.
If you just go back to that slide there, that last one, you see the stand of trees at the back there. I do believe that our daughter performed with their school band to an audience down there, I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. We did a performance in those gardens. Touring with Lady Joy could confirm that with a nod or a whistle.
2012.
2012, yeah. So
wow.
That's how come I recognise those stairs.
It's a phenomenal garden. Yeah, it's an amazing garden. It's just so much history in Salzburg, and I went to a concert of a lady who played some of Mozart's original pieces that he wrote for the Archbishop when he was 6 years old on a harpsichord. And like just to hear it on a harpsichord in the building where it was first performed, however many hundred years ago, it's pretty phenomenal. So definitely an experience. And then headed off to Greece. So this is the Greek island of Skiathos, which is right next to the little itsy bitsy tiny island of Skopelos, which we also went to, which those who are more interested in modern musicals would know that is the island where they filmed the first Mamma Mia movie, and walked up the steps to the church that they used at the end of the movie. Well, from the outside anyway. The actual church inside is about 2 meters by 2 meters square. So they certainly didn't film the church scene at the end of the movie in the church. There's room for about 5 people in there, not rows and rows of seats for Pierce Brosnan to profess his undying love for Meryl Streep. But all the people on these Greek islands, that like they're still obsessed with the movie because Meryl Streep was there. Oh my god! But this is right up the top of the island of Skiathos in Greece, and we went on a boat, so literally yachting around the Greek islands. So yeah.
How did you find that?
Hard life for some.
How did you find the Greek islands and Greece in particular from an affordability point of view? So if you're in business but you have the ability to travel a bit, did you find it like a good place to be a nomad or to spend some time but still be able to get work done?
Well, Greece probably more so than a lot of other places because it got hit a lot harder during the GFC, and then the country went broke, right? And then they really, really struggled to come back from things. So I found that they were just more appreciative of any attention. They're like, we'll do this for you, and we'll do that for you. And they're willing to help a lot more so that you can come back and have a positive experience. And then you sort of, they don't expect a tip, but then you sort of give a bit of a tip to people as well. The people in the hotel were absolutely amazing. And I'd sit in the, so the view from my hotel was basically, imagine this sort of area here. This is not a photo of my hotel, but it's kind of the view is like that. So I would be sitting basically out here on the patio with my laptop, and they would bring me, like I'd be working for about 2 hours, and they just bring me a coffee and a sandwich because they're like, oh, you're working so hard, but it was really, really cheap, that sort of view. And I think it was 12 days that I was there for, and it was probably about $300 for the 12 days to be there, and then getting like coffees and sandwiches and chips and stuff. Just it was affordable. It was there that I actually connected with the Skiathos Cat Welfare Society. I think that's what they call it itself. So basically, all the cats on the island. There's a lady there, an ex-English expat, who married a guy about 20 years ago, and has lived on the island ever since, and set up a cat sanctuary. And so I spent the day there with them, working with the cats and helping them with the vets with the treatment and looking after them and talking to them about admin and processes and procedures, and doing the not-for-profit stuff that I do at home. Just going, well, this is what I do. Like, can I help? What are your plans? And like, oh, well, actually, we've got these plans to buy this block of land and build this building and do all these things. So from just being on the island and going, what organizations are on the island? How am I going to spend my day connecting with them? I have been working with them on their plans to purchase the block of land, which just finalised at the beginning of the month, and then working on the plans to build the building and to have proper care facilities and proper shelter facilities, and that they're so making and taking opportunities everywhere, just looking for them, being open to them, creating the opportunities, and go, this is what I do. Can I help? Can I be involved? Or I just want to go and spend some time with the cats or the dogs or whatever, and just be there. And I was, oh, this is what I do. And like, oh, we could really use somebody who could help us with that. So yeah, it's doing the work, but also just looking at other opportunities everywhere, and not just going, oh, this is my target market, this is my niche, this is what I do.
I suppose that's the benefit, I suppose, of having some degree of flexibility, but certainly there's a great message in that, being open. If you don't tell people that you're available, that you're open, and that you want to, look at opportunities, then people don't necessarily know to approach you.
Yeah, and it's not just about, I can help you, and it's going to cost you this much per hour for me to talk to you. It's about, you know what, I'm interested in what you're doing. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a chat. Actually, I could probably help you with that, and I could probably figure a way that you don't have to pay me up front. I can just find funding or other sources of revenue and get paid from that, so that if I don't do my job and I don't get the success and I don't get you the funding for the project, then you don't have to pay me. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's having the flexibility around that thought process. And because not-for-profits and a lot of organizations and companies and businesses, especially now, I'm not in a position to pay you, but I really need your help. Okay, so how do we overcome that challenge? Going around Europe and a couple of the other places that I've been has been very challenging for me to come up with different ways to do that as well. This is interesting. When I was in England, in London in November 2018, I think it was, went to the British Museum, and they've built an entire room of the British Museum of the freezers from within the Acropolis. And now they're in the process here of actually recreating and everything. And I'm like, the first thought that came through to my mind was, I wonder if they've spoken to the British about actually getting the originals back from the British Museum, because it's a really big project. I'm not sure the British government's going to be all that okay with giving them back, but it was certainly an eye opener, having been to the British Museum and then actually being on the Acropolis in Greece, and going, that's going to be an interesting conversation for someone to have at some point. So after Greece, I went to Bangladesh and Nepal, and while I was in Bangladesh, it took a bit of organising, but this is actually me in a school in the Rohingya refugee camp within the borders of Bangladesh, just inside the border from Myanmar. There's like 1.2 million Rohingyans that have been displaced from Myanmar. And it was one of the most humbling and upsetting and exciting and weird experiences of my life, despite the 2 months that I'd had before that. I decided, I got to Bangladesh, and the lady that I was staying with her husband, said, "Oh, have you heard about the Rohingya refugee camp?" I'm like, "Not really. What's this about?" Because we don't get a lot of news about that sort of stuff in Australia, right? And he goes, "Oh, yeah, it's down there, and there were these people who'd been displaced." And I started looking into it, and ended up getting down to Cox's Bazar, and tried to, in contact with the UN, in contact with a number of the charitable organisations that work down there, and had to get on a 3-hour flight to get to the town that's the nearest to there. Was in a hotel, had spent 3 days on site trying to organise things, as well as like a week and a half beforehand, and nothing had happened. Got a call at 8:30 at night from the owner of the hotel to meet him in the restaurant. And he said, "I hear that you've been trying to get out to the Rohingya refugee camp." And I'm like, "Yep. Been thinking about it. Like, it's just something that I do a lot of this kind of not-for-profit work and charity work and getting involved in local projects. And if there's something I can do and be involved in." And they said, "Okay, what are you interested in doing?" I'm like, "Basically anything, really." So, "Okay, give me a minute." He literally got on after me trying to organize this stuff for a week and a half, and since finding out about it, he got on his phone at 8:30 at night and had organized for me to basically turn up at this school at 8 o'clock the next morning and spend the morning with the kids, and doing head, shoulders, knees and toes, and playing games with them. And I said to them, "Well, what do they need? Can I take books? Can I take school supplies or colouring stuff?" And he goes, "No, all the organisations already provide all of those essentials. What the kids don't have is toys, because none of the organisations are actually able to provide them with toys, because it's seen as a non-essential item." Now, I don't know how many kids you guys know, but I don't know many kids for whom toys are a non-essential item. So at 9 o'clock at night, in the middle of nowhere in very southern Bangladesh, I got in the back of a tuk-tuk and spent an hour going around night markets buying up like $300 worth of toys and balls and trucks and bubbles and stuff for girls, and all sorts of different things. So you can see next to my legs, there's 2 bags. There were 4 bags that size, plus 2 massive amounts of balls of toys that took into the kids that had never seen to. Some of these kids have been, at this age, have been born in this camp. And some youngers have been born in the camp, and they know no different. And we would look at a refugee camp as the most dire situation. I was bawling my eyes out driving through, pouring with rain. They've got corrugated iron wrapped around bamboo posts as shacks that these people live in. No electricity, no running water. They've got plumbing, like bathrooms way down the road. There's absolutely nothing. And look at the smiles and like the girl's face on the right hand side of the picture. Like, all of them are just so happy and so content and laughing and jumping around, and they have no comprehension of the dire situation and what they are doing without, because this is their reality. And it was a real massive reality check for me to go, you know what, maybe sometimes when we think things are pretty bad, they're not as bad as we think, or not necessarily as bad as we think. So that was, a life-changing, unexpected experience. And to get there, the guy from the hotel, we had an armed escort. So a guy, like a guard in the van for like a 2.5 hour drive on muddy, remote tracks in the middle of nowhere. And we think roads are bad in Queensland, nothing compared to these places. Rubbish piled up, feet high all along the sides of the roads and everything. And traveling on these roads with a guy with a semi-automatic weapon sitting there just in case. They're political refugees. So the government in Myanmar has a different core religion. So all these are pushed out. So yes, war, but also so that they don't continue to have more war. It's it just, I don't know, still makes me emotional doing it. But just the fact that within 12 hours I've gone from never going to happen to actually standing in a school in a refugee camp. So then I went to Nepal, And this is a photo of me at Buddha's birthplace. So in Lumbini, and all the Tibetan prayer flags all through the trees. And it's an interesting experience because it's very touristy because it's Buddha's birthplace and people want to see where Buddha was born. And they've got all the Buddhist temples, and Buddhist people from all over the world can stay in the Buddhist temples from the different countries, because most countries have their own, including Australia actually has its own Buddhist temple there at Lumbini. And it's all just so loud. There's so many people there and it was so hot, and you can actually walk into this building that they've created over the spot where Buddha was actually born. And then there's a big pond outside the building, and on the other side of that building, like where these trees are and these Tibetan prayer flags, it's maybe 10 meters from all the noise, but it's just so silent. It's like it's this meditation space, and it's just the stark difference between the light, between the sound and the silence, just really hits in the face. Again, a phenomenal experience. When I was the reason I went to Nepal was that I'd met a lady in Queensland a couple of years ago who was setting up a female entrepreneurship program. And it just so happens that Joe and I have both stayed in the house with this lady in the middle of Kathmandu with Robina, and worked on the projects. So
that's right.
It's a big world, but it's a small world.
It is, yeah. So Joy and Troy have lived in the same house in Nepal for a period of time with Robina. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, so I was there during the Diwali festival, and it was also my birthday during the Diwali festival, and I was living in their house on my birthday during Diwali. And so they did the whole the worship thing, and the hat and the presents and the gifts and the worship and the day that I was there was actually the day of worship so my birthday was on the same day as the day of worship for the goddess of wealth. So Robina was like, okay, that's a sign.
Yeah.
You're here, you're doing business, you're doing this stuff. You're here for the goddess of wealth. This is meaningful. We're going to have this relationship where obviously we're going to do something about this. And I did a couple of workshops. She pulled together. She's got a co-working space there, as you guys know, and she pulled together, I think it was about 23 people into the room, and I did a presentation to them. So I'm talking about what I do in English, and then Robina is translating from English into Nepalese, and then they're asking her questions and she's translating those back into English, and then I'm answering them in English and she's translating. So you can imagine that what would normally be a half an hour workshop turned into about an hour and a half. Just trying to with all the interpretations and translations, but it was really great, and they've had so much good feedback afterwards, and she's still running with some of the programs, and we're still working on development of some more programs for her and expansion of what she's doing. So it's great to have had that opportunity. That was the reason to go to Nepal, but then to be able to have the other experiences that I had in Nepal as well was great. And that's part of having a worldwide network. He says, look, I want to go to this country. I'm thinking of coming to this country. Maybe we could hang out. Is there something I can help you with? Where there's a dog. So the UK has a charity called Dogs Trust. They support other dog charities around the world in developing countries. But the Nepalese government had stopped the ability for the funding to come from the Dogs Trust to the animal welfare organization that the money was going to. So these other people in the community just went, well, we'll just do our own then. So they literally set up their own organization, and they bought a block of land and they built a shelter on it, and they've got dogs there and they've got a vet there, and they're just doing it themselves, because it's like, if the government's not going to do it for us, we'll do it ourselves. And so again, working with them on how to develop some strategies and get some funding and put some structure around this sort of stuff. But in amongst all of that work stuff, also my friend of mine said to me, if you could do anything for your birthday this year, what would you do? And I said, you know what, I've always wanted to go to the Himalayas. So I got to walk in the Himalayas, and it doesn't look like the Himalayas because it's not covered with snow. It's not Everest, but it's Nagakot, which is nearby. And I woke up of a morning and could look out at all the Himalayan mountains in front of the window as I woke up in the morning, and this is walking through Nagakot in the mountains, and there's a lot of people live in the Himalayas. I didn't expect there would be that many people that live in the Himalayas and so remote from the middle of nowhere, but absolutely stunning part of the world. And another bucket list item. I've ticked off so many items off my bucket list. I've had to create 3 more in the last 6 months to come up with different things to do. And just so many temples in Nepal. Temples everywhere. And of course, back to London for a while, and go from the heat of Nepal back to freezing cold London. Yay! But after London, and a friend of mine works in the Foreign Office, and just before Christmas, took me for a tour through the Foreign Office, and that's the door of number 10 Downing Street. So growing up watching, seeing Yes Minister and those sorts of programs, and knowing the politics and what's going on in the world, to be sort of that close to number 10 was, another bucket list item that I'd always never going to get there, never going to get to London, never going to get to number 10. Most people have to stay at the end of the road, but that's about as close as most people would be able to have the chance to get to number 10 without actually going through the door.
Yeah.
And then off to Kenya. So this is within the first 2 days of being in Kenya, I got to feed a giraffe and pat an elephant. And this elephant sanctuary actually adopted one of the elephants, so you help contribute towards their upkeep, and went in to help them put the elephants to sleep. And there's one that was about 3 months old, and I was standing at the gate of its enclosure, and it reached its trunk out and just wrapped its trunk around my arm and just held onto my arm. I was like, just didn't pull it, didn't squeeze it, didn't do anything, just literally wrapped its trunk around my arm. And I'm like, okay, I'm in love. Elephants are obviously my spirit animal. So spending time at the Dorothy Sheldrick Elephant Trust there, and since then I've started working with an organisation also in Nepal who that is getting elephants that are in the tourism trade in Nepal, when they're retired or when they're sick, or just getting them out of the tourism trade because they get treated not all that well. So I'm working with them on their plans they've got a block of land and they've got some buildings at the moment, but how to expand and how to get more support. They've already been supported by the Bridget Bardot Foundation, so they're also doing some work. So now it's a matter of working with them on expanding that process and those projects. And again, every day, go and do stuff in the morning, and then work of an afternoon. All the different time zones, all the different places all over the world, still keeping connection with people back home, picking up new clients, looking at working with the RSPCA in Kenya as well on some of their plans, because it was literally on the way past. I was driving past, I was in the car when somebody else was driving past. I'm like, oh, RSPCA, I'll work with the RSPCA in Broken Hill in Australia. And they said, oh, let's call in. And it just happened that a friend that I knew there that we were staying with knew the lady who was the chief executive officer of the KSPCA. And so we've been talking and helping them to develop plans as well. Again, making a taking opportunity, literally drive past the door and end up working with them and helping with them. So there's always the opportunities to look for opportunities and think outside the box, to be able to help and for an application of what I do. And this
was it challenging Wi-Fi wise? Yeah.
No, everywhere that we've gone, I've had I had a European SIM card, or I had a Kenyan SIM card, or I had Nepalese SIM card, or there's been Wi-Fi. So throughout Europe and throughout a number of places in Asia, like when I was in Thailand and even in Kenya, you walk into and here in where am I at the moment? Bulgaria, that's right. You walk into a restaurant and you have free automatic Wi-Fi. Like it's not even a question about it. Like we got to struggle to find places where you can find Wi-Fi or work in a co-working center so that you can get access to Wi-Fi and, overpay for it in some instances in some places, but I'm sure not there in Toowoomba. But yeah, there's Wi-Fi like everywhere and it's really good, really high speed, really reliable. So yeah, it hasn't actually been as challenging as I expected it to be. Just get a local SIM card that's pretty much data. And then like I was saying before about using WhatsApp instead of like a phone number. So I've got my Australian number is my WhatsApp phone number so that people in Australia can still recognize the number format. But yeah, I make phone calls using Wi-Fi and data on WhatsApp and linking into Wi-Fi in different places. Every place that I've stayed has had really good Wi-Fi. When I've stayed with people in different countries like Kenya and Bangladesh and Nepal and Greece, where I've stayed with people that I know. They've had internet there anyway. So, and when I'm right in front of Mount Kilimanjaro, I'm not really interested in Wi-Fi anyway. So it's a matter of working it out and finding that balance. I remember this morning we got into the Safari ute and the four-wheel drive and went out in front of Kilimanjaro and we're driving along. The driver was driving along and I looked out the left of my window and saw a massive bull elephant. Huge. Even from a distance, I could tell he was a huge elephant. And I said, stop. And he stopped and I was sitting there and about 5 minutes later, the elephant turned and started walking towards the car. And then I could see other elephants as well. So like the female elephants, and then they got even closer and I saw some baby elephants and there was 13 elephants in this herd walking basically directly towards the car with Mount Kilimanjaro in the background with this tiny little bit of cloud, and then a flock of birds flew past right over the top of them. And it was like this screenshot from The Lion King in front of Kilimanjaro, like the ultimate money shot with the acacia trees and the elephants and everything. And it was, I keep saying, oh my God, this is the most amazing experience of my life. And then, within a week, it was another most amazing experience of my life. So it was just, it's just been phenomenal. And even right there in the middle of nowhere with the data in my phone, it was still, full reception on 4G. So I was able to share the experience pretty much straight away. While I was here, it was New Year's Eve. So did New Year's morning with the sun coming up over Mount Kenya, which is at the other end of Kenya. And in the middle of a game reserve on New Year's Eve, I'm in Kenya and I'm ringing my mother on video chat, who's at right on midnight in Queensland, to say Happy New Year from the middle of a game reserve in Kenya. So no, Wi-Fi and access to data hasn't been a challenge. It's been quite a positive experience. And then from Kenya, I went up to France. So this is my first skiing trip ever. My first time on the slopes ever. And, just go up to the slopes, go practice of the morning, then come back to the chalet about lunchtime, and then spend the afternoon working on my laptop with that as my view, basically, because again, Wi-Fi is pretty awesome. So, and work from anywhere, do work from anywhere.
Sucks to be you, hey?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's quite a view, and wow.
Yep.
Keep going.
And then so from France, basically here to Bulgaria, and having a couple, because I'd been in France and been started skiing there, and then come to Bulgaria. It's a ski resort, and planning to be here for a few months because it's snowing at the moment as I'm talking to you. It has been for the last 2 days. all the rooftops are covered in snow. The mountains are covered in snow. It's snowing down here in the town as well as way up on the mountains. And the skiing is absolutely phenomenal here in Bansko. However, because of lockdown, we're not allowed to go outside. So it's like the last week or this week is like the best snow of the season, and the entire place is in lockdown and nobody can go outside and do anything. And they've shut down all of the restaurant, like the entire town is just completely shut down totally. It's not even we're just closed, and when they release lockdown, we'll open up again. No. The restaurants have all been cleaned out. All of the shops, all the ski hire places, they've been boarded up. There's black plastic on the inside of the windows. They're locked down. There were guys in hazmat suits going through all of the shops, disinfecting them and cleaning them and locking them down. That it's not just lockdown; it's shut down. And on Saturday last weekend, they not a few days, however, almost 2 weeks ago now, the military rolled into each of the roads in and out of the town, and there's a town, Razlog, that's 5 kilometers away. Nope, not an option. You can only get there by road, and it is not an option. You cannot get there, and they can't get here. There's military vehicles. The only people that are allowed in are the trucks bringing in medications and food. No one out, no one in. Walking on the streets, we had to all sign a form with all of our personal details and where we're staying, and that agreeing that we won't go outside other than to go to the pharmacy or to the shop. Otherwise, I can't remember, was it the lady was saying it right at the start of the call about the police stopping people and asking them what are they doing and where are you going and why are you not at home. Yep, we've had that here as well, and it's pretty strict and it's pretty severe. They did have a couple of bus loads of British tourists, and they literally loaded them onto the buses. A couple of Russian tourists tried to get on, and they were, let's say, escorted off the bus in no uncertain terms. The bus had a police escort for the 2.5-hour drive from here to the Sofia airport to put them on a dedicated plane back to London, and they were all escorted through security by the police and everything. So it's a very, very strict. I mean, we're behind the Iron Curtain, right? So, it's an old Soviet country. They don't do nothing by halves. And it's basically like, if the government says you're going to do this, it's not a question. It's not a debate. It's not a, what do you think? It's a, it gets done.
It's an order.
Oh yeah, and orders shall be followed. But as a result of that, no more, they've tested hundreds of people in town, and there are no new cases of anybody testing positive for the virus at all anywhere. So without getting into the debate about what works and lockdown works and what doesn't and what extent that people should go to, because there's plenty of people with plenty of opinions on that out there already. The experience is that we are in lockdown, but it wouldn't matter where in the world we would be, we'd still be in lockdown. So might as well stay here and so I've been able to get heaps of work done, a nice balance of plenty of work and plenty of Netflix. And all these times where people go, I'm too busy to work on my business, or I'm too busy to do this, I'm too busy to do that. Well, now's the opportunity to do that. Look at your business in that way and look at what you can do. I'm still picking up new clients. I'm still getting referrals to new clients while I'm over here, because people are like, oh, can you help me with this? Or this person said that you'd be the person to talk to. Even though I'm on the opposite end of the earth now, an 8-hour time difference. So, for me, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. I just organize my time schedule and say, hey, if you want to talk to me, then I'll talk to you after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So between sort of 4 and 9 p.m. is when I'm on calls constantly and emails backwards and forwards and sorting things out, because we built that relationship with existing clients, and then they tell people, when they refer them through, say, hey, Troy's in England, in Europe, sorry, there's a bit of a time difference, so he'll only be able to talk to you between like 4 and 7 of an evening. So they're having that conversation for me as well, because I've always kept that communication open, and they know now, after me being over here for 6 months in different continents and different time zones, that I'm still working with them, and I'm still in contact with them. And if I say that I'm going to call them back the next day, I'll still call them back the next day, and make things work. So yeah, and that sort of brings us to where we are at the moment, where I'm sitting here and I've got 3 big proposals that I'm working on at the moment for the Ignite grant. I've got the Female Founders grant. I've got 2 projects I'm working on for that at the moment as well. I've got 2 new not-for-profits that have been set up in the last month since I've been here, that we're still developing the budgets for those tenders that they've been asked to apply for. So it's literally it's the epitome of, I have literally run my business from all over the world. The only place I haven't been to is America and South America. Yet. But yeah, I've been able to build the business while working all over the world and still provide that support. So with all the stimulus packages over the last week, I'm in a number of accounting and finance and bookkeeping groups, and they're all asking about stimulus for this package and that state. So I just spent like my daytime, your nighttime, just sat down and trawled through all the Treasury websites and all the government websites and everything. Actually read through the government legislation, because I'm that kind of nerd that actually reads tax legislation, and and pulled together that information and started sharing it out with everybody as well. And then I've been talking about that pretty much non-stop over the last week. So even though that's happening in Australia and it's relevant to Australia, and I'm not in Australia, I'm still able to look at the stimulus and then the other grants and the other funding and the other strategies and the banking and working on business strategies and everything while I'm over here. So
Troy,
definitely thinking outside the box.
Got a question in the chat there, and the SJA Media is interested in finding out, is the government providing any support to the people in lockdown there, or the ones that are now out of work, or what's happening from that aspect for the Bulgarian people?
The short answer is no. They basically just get to suck it up. That's just over here. It's basically, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I've met a number of people being here in the last month. The people in the restaurants and people in the hotels, and and they're all like, "No, that's it. It's done. We're out. There's no stimulus packages. There's no rebates. There's no here, have this money back or payroll tax back or anything like that. None of that at all. It's just, no, your business is over. That's just what you need to do, and it's done." So the place that I'm staying isn't a hotel. It's a longer term accommodation place. So there's 2 to 3 months or more that people stay in this particular place where I'm staying. So it doesn't come under the hotels have to be shut down, which is great that I picked that place to stay, because otherwise I would have had to find somewhere. And the fact that I'd been there for 5 weeks beforehand, and was planning to stay there for the full 3 months, is why I was allowed to stay instead of being asked to leave, like a lot of the other short-term tourists were actually, let's say, asked by a former Soviet government to leave the country. And she's like, no, there's no support, there's no benefits, there's no anything at all. There's no reductions in taxes or rebates on anything at all. They get nothing. So as much as there are some people who feel like they haven't or aren't in a position of being able to receive much from the federal government in Australia, we still definitely live in the lucky country. And there's one of the things I've said to a few people is that I've always loved, I'm very patriotic. I've always known that Australia is an amazing country, and that I got the lottery of life to have been able to be born in Australia and grew up there. But having traveled to all these different countries and worked in all the different projects that I've worked on, and seeing the bins to these different places, and there's some beautiful places around the world, but transport systems that don't work, electricity that just goes out, you're not quite sure when it's going to come back on, government services that is like, yeah, sure, it's government services, that's going to have, like, the not reliable roads in the middle of Kathmandu that are like dirt tracks, rubbish collection that just doesn't exist in Bangladesh. All of these things that we take for granted as absolute fundamentals in our society that most people in other countries couldn't even dream of. Like, we get upset because we're on the phone so much our battery dies, and why doesn't iPhone have a better battery in their phone? Or, gee, the Wi-Fi is not working. Things like that, where there's so many people with so many significant things that they just have to go without. Makes me very much appreciate what we do have in Australia so very much more. And the opportunities to set up and run your own business, to set up a business off from a standing start, and the amount of support, through the startup ecosystem, and all the work that, like, we all know Chad as well, that he's been doing, and a number of others in that field that are there to support, like you guys supporting a community of business owners to grow and develop their own business, that self-actualization, that self-determination, that drive, that ability to take something and make something of it, make something of yourself, have the ability to get support, to run our own lives and be in control of our own lives. That, it's there are a lot of barriers, like intentional barriers, to people being able to do that in so many other countries in the world. Having traveled to those places, it's very, very obvious now. And Australia, there are billions of dollars of stimulus at the moment to support people coming out across Australia, because I've been in this space a lot for the last week, figuring out and helping people with it. That just isn't there in the rest of the world, like, at all. So we live in a very lucky country. So are you saying something, David? Because I think you're muted.
Yes, my unmute button wasn't working. I was pressing it and it wasn't working, but we're unmuted now. But yeah, it really is incredible, the support that is coming out, and hopefully everybody is truly appreciative of that, because we both Joy and myself do have some experience in different parts of the world. I've seen Joy folding and nodding and folding a lot along the way. So yeah, I'd love it if Joy felt free to comment a little bit on some of her experiences around Kathmandu and Nepal, just let us know, Joy, what your opinion is around that.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks, Troy. For me, it was like reliving some memories. I've been to many of those places, but then there's a few like, oh, I haven't been there yet. I better add that to my list. So thanks for that. That's been really good. But yeah, Kathmandu is probably a really good example to just reflect on. And particularly, I was there not long after, well, when I say not long, less than a couple of years after the major earthquake. And we think about, the stimulus package that we get, because I'm going to say this really lightly, but a few people are sick, compared to the fact that a few million people, lost their homes, they fell down, their people died, and yet they still did nothing. And I was there like a couple of years later, and their homes still hadn't been rebuilt. The rubble was still on the street. We really are fortunate. And sometimes our sense of entitlement gets away with us, and we kind of think, well, this should happen, and it takes that reminder to say, well, actually, we're still really, really lucky. Like, someone will probably let us stay in our home if we're a bit late with our rent. Our electricity probably won't get cut off if we can't pay our bill on time. Those sorts of things where in some of those places, yeah, they don't have electricity to start with, or it's on a, you know, prepay basis, those sorts of things. So yeah, quite incredible. So
Yeah,
thanks for the reminder.
even at the end of October, when I was there, there were still temples that had massive wooden posts basically holding the walls in place, because even after all this time, they still hadn't fixed the temples. Even like right in the middle of Kathmandu, there's a big square. I'm sure you probably were there, and I can't remember the name of it. There's a whole lot of temples together, and the big museum there, and there's still temples in that massive tourist area that still haven't been fixed yet. It's just, yeah, and homes that still have rubble and still have the posts holding the walls up, because like they also have this mentality of, well, hang on a minute, if that's worked for the last 5 years, do we really need to fix it? Do we really need to do anything different? It's like, it's working, that'll do kind of thing, rather than, building standards are interesting. I remember the place I stayed in, Nice, I had to walk. So when I left Australia, I sold literally everything, and I now have a 16-kilo backpack and a laptop bag, and that is all of my worldly possessions, and that's everything that I own, and it travels all the world with me. And that's my life, what my life was condensed to in material things. And I'm carrying this up a spiral staircase up 6 floors in Nice, in this tiny little thing that I didn't even fit in the staircase. To got this tiny little area and across little walkways and things, and the different building standards, like in Greece, where you're looking at buildings and you think, how is that even still standing up? Or in Kenya, where they literally are holding cement roofs up with bamboo poles while they build these buildings. Or in Bangladesh, where they just have bamboo covered with corrugated iron. It was hard to actually determine the difference between the refugee camp and the town that was close to it, because the building standards are just so not what we're used to, shall we say. So yeah, we have a basic level of living and expectation that a lot of places and a lot of parts of the world wouldn't even be able to conceive of.
Yes, Paul. Paul, do you have a question, Paul? You put your hand up.
Yeah, Troy. Just had a question about in Australia at the moment. I got to feel we have a bit of a problem with people, the compliance of people actually complying to what the government's asking of them. I got to, from what you say, are the people more compliant in where you are, or is it Aussies seem to be fairly laid back in their approach to staying home, stuff like that. Is the problem the same there, or is that why they've put that almost, what would you call, military rule in place there?
Kind of like a draconian response. It was like, you don't have a choice. Look, I have a lot of friends and a lot of contacts in Australia, and I've heard that a number of times, that people are still out in the streets and they're not respecting that, it's not them getting sick, it's other people getting sick, or they can carry it and make other people sick. And also, Australians are known all over the world, having now travelled to quite a number, like 18 countries in the last 6 months, that we're very relaxed, very casual. The she'll be right, mate thing, part of the Australian psyche, it's well known all over the world. So it doesn't mean that some people don't care, but you've also got that kind of everywhere as well. People are people at the end of the day. I think in our society, one of my very good friends here I've got a number of good friends. There's one British guy who's like, oh, well, if that's what they tell us to do, then we just have to do it, right? It's like that. Okay, if you say so. Me, I'm like, yeah, it's not that bad. We'll come out of this soon, and we've got to put up with it for a while, but hopefully it won't be too bad. I've got an American friend here, and she was just like, what do you mean I can't do what I want to do? Like, that's our freedom, that's our civil liberty. Like, we can do this if we want. Like, how dare they say that we can't do this? So whereas the Bulgarians are like, they said we have to stay inside. Like it was like this. Like, what do you mean you're not staying inside? Well, you think you want to go to the shop? You're not allowed to go to the shop. What are you doing? The government said don't go to the shop. So don't. So every society just had it, and it's been actually an interesting thing to watch the different way that people from different societies respond to the instructions in the government, from the whatever you say, sir, to the you can't tell me what to do, or the whatever kind of responses as well. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, well, I assume that they're compliant people, because in their past, because it was a communism up until the 80s, a part of USSR, wasn't it?
Yeah, sure, was.
So that's why they do as they're told, because in the USSR days you usually die if you don't do as you're told.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australia, it's rather the opposite.
A couple of people have referred to it as socialism, but I'm not sure Bernie Sanders would like that very much.
Who's he? He runs a place.
No, Bernie Sanders, the Democratic dude in socialist. Anyway. So.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds to me like the authorities have a fair bit of control, and as a result, they say jump, and people say yes. How high, sir? Whereas in Australia, Aussies will go, she'll be right, mate. I just got to pop out and get something. And it worries me a bit that the Aussie attitude is going to potentially be it could do a lot of damage.
Yeah, it could extend things for, and that's what I said. Like they did this complete lockdown. You don't have a choice. This is not an optional thing that they did here, and as a result, that the outcome speaks for itself. No new people have been tested, have come back as being tested positive at all. I mean, take from that what you will, but that was what they were going for, and that's what they've achieved. Whether you agree with the methods or not.
Probably achieved that by sending all the British back on the bus or something, wasn't it? That was how they did that.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Like that, there was a period of time, like a few days, where the British were sort of on the receiving end of some unexpected racism. Like, you're British, you brought it here, get out. But yeah, that's just the situation. I don't really have an opinion on it necessarily, but it's just it is what it was.
That's kind of the conversation that I saw as well. So, Joy, you had a question?
Yeah, just another question. So obviously, we know obviously a lot of people who operate as digital nomads or location independent or whatever you'd like to call it, and the the space that we operate in, I guess, is looking at how people can engage with the local community that they're in and doing what they can for the community. And when we travel around the world, we get various feedback about the impact that digital nomads have in different places. And obviously you're really quite intentional about connecting with local people and seeing how you can help them. Where do you think that sort of and coronavirus aside, like it's here and it'll come and go and whatnot, but in general, do you sort of see that there is more of a trend for people who are traveling and working to start to engage in the community, or are you still a bit of the exception of really intentionally putting yourself out there to do something good in the community that you're in?
Well, I've been called a lot of things. Normal is not usually one of them. But so I am a little bit outside the realm of some people, but looking for those opportunities where there are co-working spaces or digital nomad communities in different places. As I was looking forward of where I'm going to go from here as well, I was looking at, okay, so where are there digital nomad communities around the world, and then what projects are there nearby that in those countries, and what is the economic situation like? And so I'm always intentionally looking and thinking about things in that way. I'm just wondering if maybe I stop sharing my screen and then you can actually see me again. Hey. So like intentionally looking for those opportunities and thinking about that. And because was planning to stay in, I did a little bit of holidaying, but then also wanting to stay in places for extended periods of time. there's no point. I didn't see it as there being any point for me to look to be in a place for 1 to 3 months and not get involved with the community as well. I mean, otherwise I might as well just stay in Brisbane. What's the point to traveling to all these amazing places? Yes, there's the tourism side of things, but without actually getting involved in the community and saying, hey, I've got this skill set. Can I work with you? Can I help you? Can I be involved with some of your projects? Something that seems really interesting. Anytime I can cuddle elephants, I'm all for that. So try, or dogs or kittens or whatever. So yeah, it has been an intentional thing for me, and that's where I was trying to spend that 6 months traveling around Australia, working out how it's going to work, so that when I go overseas, I can be able to continue to do that, and just meeting locals and going on local tours and going into local restaurants, and not like I have been in one McDonald's in the last 6 months, and the only reason for that was because when I got to Bucharest, it was 5:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and there were no cafes open, and I'm not a morning person at the best of time, and I was like, I need coffee. And the McDonald's opens at 6 a.m. and it has free Wi-Fi, right? Again, look for a place where you've got Wi-Fi, look for what you need coffee. But other than that, I've just been in local restaurants, local cafes, anything local. I'm like, I go to Greece, I want to eat Greek food. I don't want to eat burgers and steak. So I come to Bulgaria, I want to eat local Bulgarian food cooked by traditional, old, recipes that have been handed down for 50 generations kind of thing. I don't want to go and eat chips and chicken parmigiana when I'm in this country. And by doing that, you talk to the restaurant owners and go, oh, how are you doing? Did you have many people here? There is as you guys know, there is a co-working community here that's been built over a period of time. So there's people, not right now, but up to 2 weeks ago, people from all over the world that were here for the same reason, to experience Bulgaria, to experience the ski resort, to experience the local culture. And we're going to a place wanting to experience the local culture, just like when we were in Nepal with Rubina, you'd go to different places and go, oh, actually, don't go over here, come over here, because tourists go over there. You want to go over here because this is really interesting and the food's really great and this is a really good experience. Then you get a very different take on the place if you're engaging more with the local people, and then they're willing to help you. I'll come into my house and we'll make you dinner, or come to this party, or come to this, or do this, or do that. So yeah, it's I never used to be a people person. I was an accountant for 10 years, right? You stare at a computer screen. That's your entire life. Yeah, you can talk to people. Accountants don't talk to people. They just do numbers stuff. But, over the 3 years I'm working in the startup space in Brisbane and working in the co-working spaces and developing that ability to present to people and talk to people and engage and say genuine, so tell me about what you do. Or, what do you do when you're not working? That question starts so many conversations, right? Because when you meet somebody, you go, oh, my name's this, and my name's Troy, I'm an accountant. They go, okay, next. But we always talk about the work that we do. We talk about because we do it because we're passionate about it, or if they're business because we're passionate about it. But then you ask that question, so what do you do when you're not working? People go, oh, well, I'm like here, I love skiing, or I love snowboarding, I love doing this, or I love doing that, or I'm involved in this sport, or I'm involved in that project. Oh, you're involved in that project, tell me more about that. Oh, you're involved in that sporting club, talk to me more about that. Oh, we're doing this. Well, what are you finding challenging with that? Oh, we're really finding challenging with getting these people to do this, or getting money to do that, or do it. Oh, actually it happens that I'm a business consultant, so I can maybe, if you want to talk about it at some point, that's fine. Look, if you're talking to me, you've helped me out, I'm more than willing to have a chat with you about that in return as well. And they're like, oh, okay, actually that would be awesome. The people I'm working with the elephants in Nepal, I got in touch with them because Nepal, elephants, good combination. And they went, we were literally talking about looking to try and find somebody like you a week ago. We didn't know how to even start Googling what we're looking for. But through a conversation, it just built from there. So yeah, just talking to people, asking them about them as a person, and what's life like here in Bulgaria, or the local stories about how the two mountains, the one is the princess and one was the guy that was trying to invade, and she didn't want to be married to this guy, so she ran up the hill and jumped off the top of the thing into the lake, and now they're there forever together. Her and her lover are there together forever. And as the seasons change, she changes her dress for him 4 times a year, because it's spring it's flowers, and summer it's green, and autumn it's gold, and winter it's snow, right? So 4 different seasons. So without talking to the locals, you don't get those stories. And I see David nodding. He's like, yeah, we've heard that story too, that Tadorka. But you don't hear those stories, and you miss out on so much of the culture without actually getting involved.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Hey, sorry, Joy, you want to say something?
Just thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So Troy, just quickly, it's obvious that you're pretty switched on with the stimulus packages and what's happening in that space. Did you have something, a link to anything that you wanted to share before we wrap up for the night, or some contact details on how people could get in touch with you if they wanted to look at stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so I'll just share that on my screen there for you guys as well. So this is what I was referring to before, that I'd sort of done up for the people in the accounting industry, with different links to the federal government stimulus packages, and a bit of a detail, and then the links to the websites as well. And there's parts in there for every state as well. Let's scroll down on this thing, but anyway, it's there. So I'll share that with everyone. It's not the detail, because that's why I put the links there, is so that you can see the information. I'm just going to do that. Okay. So I'll share that in the chat, or I'll try and figure out how to share that in the chat, maybe, or do I? And then everyone you'll have access to that. No, what I will do is I will send it to David, and David can upload it somehow and get it up there for everyone, so you can see what is available. Because I imagine most of the guys that you guys are connected with would be in Queensland. Queensland actually has like a lot of stimulus and a lot of support compared to other states, and it's stuff that's available for business owners. So that worksheet only relates to business stimulus, so not any of the household packages. So some people who are self-employed, have their own business, their own ABN or their own company or what have you, may be more, the support may be more in the household stimulus side of things than the business stimulus side of things. But yeah, there are loans available. So the Banking Association has relaxed the responsible lending criteria to make it easier to access loans, which, yes, are loans. So yes, do have to be repaid. They aren't, it's not funding, it's not grants, it is a loan. But to help with purchase of equipment and increasing capacity and efficiencies during this period of time, so that as things ramp up again, those things are in place, and then you can utilize that to help increase the revenue to then get to a point where you can start paying that back, because there's also a 15-month amnesty on the payments and low and no interest loans, and people who have employees. Queensland is the only state that has the ability for the up to $250,000 loans to help assist with the payment for employees. The other states don't have that. So there are things available. If you're looking at any of that stuff, or anybody that's interested in getting some more details on that stuff, this is basically my life at the moment. There's basically the conversations that I'm having for like 6 hours a day at the moment, even with all the updates that keep coming out. And like I said before, when the federal government passed the second stimulus package a couple of days ago, I actually read through the actual legislation for all of. Yo, hey Daniel, you are alive. See ya. Yeah, so this is basically my life at the moment. So anybody has any questions on that stuff, happy to answer them directly as well.
Troy, Liesl was asking, what's the best way to get in touch with you, mate?
The best way to get in touch with me is probably email, considering. So what I'll do is I will type my email address in here. Maybe. So that's me. Oh, David, you muted. So that's me.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I always do that. Yeah. So yeah, everybody grab that if you can. Yeah.
So I think, Troy, you're on LinkedIn and those sorts of things as well.
I certainly am. Yeah.
So perhaps we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, all the business stuff on LinkedIn and all the fun adventure I was doing stuff on Facebook.
Are you okay for people to reach out through Facebook to connect?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. LinkedIn or Facebook, or I think I've already got a couple of requests from people on the call through Facebook. So yeah, that's completely fine.
No worries, jolly good. And there we go. So we've had a late arrival from Daniel Johnson up in whereabouts are you, Dan? You're up in Rockhampton.
I'm up in Rockhampton today. Yeah.
Rockhampton, American in Rockhampton. You locked down in Rockhampton.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, no worries, jolly good. Yeah, and yeah. So well, look, you know, thank you, Troy. Really appreciate you taking the time to connect with us here back in Queensland and sharing your story. And it was inspiring to see all the different places that you've been and to hear about the different organisations that you've worked with. So what I will just do is just throw it open quickly to the floor out there and see if anybody has any final questions that they'd like to put to Troy before we do wrap things up for the night.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was great. Thanks for the pictures of Austria. That made me really sad and homesick. My dad's from Vienna, and obviously my name's Liesl, so I was named after Liesl from The Sound of Music. So I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be there now instead of in my little unit in Kelvin Grove? I at least have nicer food. The food would be nicer. So maybe a bit
if the restaurants were open.
Yeah, but my auntie can cook.
Oh,
I'll just like bail up with my auntie and my cousins. My cousin's a chef, so I'd be fine. I'm pretty sure. But that was really nice. I've been there and I've danced around that glass house. Unfortunately, lucky for me, I don't have a photo because it was quite embarrassing. But yeah, thanks. That was really interesting and really great. It was nice to do a bit of armchair traveling.
Yes. Good.
Thank you, Troy, very much for your information. And yes, I think we'd all like to be a bit of a digital nomad, but not at this stage. Maybe in about 18 months' time. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, we'll see how things start growing. But
exactly.
Yeah, people said, you know, some people have asked, oh, do you think digital nomad, you know, the whole concept of being a digital nomad is going to be problematic now unless people are going to be wanting to do it? I'm like, I don't know, with as many people that are realizing they can't actually do their work from home or from wherever and not actually have to go into an office, you know, to be under, you know, the supervision of a manager that may or may not know what they're actually doing. You know, for me, it could be opening up the opportunity for even more people.
Yeah. It is. It's great. I'm actually working in Toowoomba, but my office is based in Brisbane. So, yeah.
So I'm just sort of reading Christine's question. So for just the question about being happy or a higher standard of living. So the place that I left when I decided to travel around Australia and then go overseas was a high-rise waterfront apartment in the middle of Brisbane City, just at the eastern end of South Bank, looking out over the river and over the city and everything. So a fairly decent standard of living. Had a few squatters staying in my spare room every now and then as well at times. Yeah. But Daniel stayed a couple of times, but he can cook, so that was all right. Yeah, he does love his tacos. And went from that to being, staying in huts and hostels, not just hotels, but hostels and these tiny little Airbnbs and in these weird places. But I think happiness is an individual thing, just like, how do you define success is an individual thing. I know some people that think they're traveling light when they have 3 massive suitcases, whereas my entire life is a backpack. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm like, you can't bring it down to the essentials. And I'm not, I wouldn't say necessarily happy is the word that I would use. I would say fulfilled. I think in alignment with who I am, my sense of who I want to be and how I want to show up in the world. And I don't need material stuff for that. I mean, I've had material things. I've had lots of property. I've had successful business. I've had all these things and these apartments and flashy cars and all this stuff. And that's been great. And for me, it proves that I can do it, not that I have to have it just because I can. Now I put my time, the money that I make, and I put my time, because my time has value. It's not about the cost. It's not about the money that I make. It's about the value that I bring as a result of what I do with my time. So by working with businesses and organizations all over the world, I feel more fulfilled. And if it's living in a studio apartment or living in a massive house with 15 other people, or whatever it is, it's experiences, not things, that makes me feel fulfilled these days. So I hope that answers that part of your question. There was something else about the health system. There's not much of a health system, let's be honest, here in Bulgaria. The local hospital is more like just think, but if the communists were running a health system, what do you think it would look like? And it's probably pretty close. It's like, yeah, you want medication? Are you dead? No, then you probably don't need it that bad. That that kind of thing. It's not great, but there are, like in saying that, there are a couple of doctors in town that have put up on the message boards about, like, don't go to the clinics, because if you're not sick when you go there, you probably will be when you leave. Then, to be able to message and do like Zoom consultations as well. Even doctors finding other ways to try and help the people in the town rather than what we would be used to going to a clinic.
So
but basically just hope you don't get sick.
Yeah. So it's not easy to compare Australia to Bulgaria in that case.
No.
It's not easy to compare Australia's health system with any health system in the world. When I was in Kathmandu, they have a few issues there, but I landed back in the UK from Nepal at like 10 o'clock on a Thursday night. 4 o'clock on a Friday morning, I woke up in the most intense pain I have ever felt in my life. I haven't given birth, and I'm not comparing it to giving birth, but it was the most intense experience I've ever had. And for the next 3 weeks, I was completely bedridden with dengue fever, very, very severe. dengue fever. I couldn't sit up. I was nauseous. I couldn't do anything. When I got to the point of, this is going to be graphic, I got to the point where I was vomiting up blood. I thought I should probably go and see a doctor. I was taken by ambulance to the hospital in England, albeit the north of England, and it was, the experience in the hospital was probably as harrowing, if not more, of just lying in bed coping with this thing for the couple of weeks beforehand. So even in a country like England, it doesn't even compare slightly to the health system that we have in Australia. Just like I was saying before, it's just another otherworldly. And, you know, Daniel being from the US, I mean, I'm sure there's good places and bad places in the US too, but I would kind of hope not to get sick there either.
Okay, well, a lot of people,
So
a lot of people complain about our health system here. Is it something comparatively pretty superior in your opinion?
Is there something superior to the Australian system?
It sounds to me like you're suggesting our Australian health system is better in a lot of countries.
Yeah, from the limited access that I've seen to it, but also our ability to access what we need in the way that we need to access it. So my former partner needed to have some minor surgery done, and it took her 6 months of trying to get an appointment in England. She had the appointment, the consultation, the minor surgery, and the follow-up all done within 2 weeks of her first phone call in Australia. And she was English. So, yeah, different expectations, different access. It's just different.
Okay,
Cool.
thanks for that.
Okay.
It was they cast a different light on our health system here. I thought it was not as good as others. Thank you. It's been interesting.
I'm sure some, like everything, some sections of things are better and worse pretty much everywhere. But I went into a pharmacy, tried to get some stuff from a pharmacy here, because one of the two things you can do is go and buy like food and go into a pharmacy here. And I went to the first pharmacy and it was closed. Went to the second pharmacy and it had like the only thing that they had was ibuprofen. How they're a pharmacy, I have no idea. I went to the third place and they went, no, just get like out, just no. Like they were open, but they weren't letting people come in to buy anything. So that was an interesting experience. And then I went to the fourth pharmacy and it was just this, like, comparatively, it was massive, but realistically, it was about the size of 7-Eleven's store, like in the middle of the city. It was this tiny little hole in the wall, but it was the biggest pharmacy in the area. So, you know, when we look at Chemist Warehouse and places like that, where it's just these massive warehouses and you've got multiple pharmacists behind the counter, that kind of thing just doesn't exist. The supermarkets here would be about a third of the size of an Aldi. And that's a supermarket. That's not just a market. That's not a corner store. That's the supermarket here. So access to all sorts of things are very, very different. But that's why you travel, right? To see those things and get the appreciation and go, ooh, that sucks. Or, yeah, that's great. Or to appreciate what is available in Australia in a different way.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Right.
Thank you, Troy. I personally can feel the internet slowing down. It's 7:54 and everybody in Toowoomba is starting to log into Netflix and Amazon Prime, Disney Channel, all those different things like that. So things are really certainly getting a bit glitchy at my end. But I'd like to, just thank you once more for joining us. Really appreciate your time. Anybody that has any questions, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, round of applause for Troy. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
There you go.
If anybody has any questions for Troy, any further questions, or they're looking for some help, or hello, we got a fish coming in from the side there. Anybody has any questions, or they want to talk to Troy about any of the services that he provides around grants and or around the stimulus packages and things like that, then reach out to him through LinkedIn or from the email that's in the chat, And yeah, so fantastic. Thanks again, Troy.
All right, guys, stay healthy, stay safe, and yeah, any questions, you know where I'm at.
Thank you, everybody.
Troy. Thanks for setting
Bye,
this
guys.
up, David. It was fantastic.
No worries. That's all because of Troy. So we'll do this again next month, the last Wednesday of the month.
Excellent. That was really good. Thank you.
No worries.
Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
everybody for coming
Bye.
along. Tell all your friends.
Everybody.
I will. I'm telling everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye now. Bye.